evolving instantaneously, and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
Thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's a real word I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take on it. Like, what's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
That's right. It's a science thing. It's a science place. It's a scientific fact that we're all up in your face. It's time once again for the one, the only Protonic reversal. Welcome to it. Tonight's special episode. Jarboe. The living Jarboe. I'm very excited to be talking to her. She's a fantastic. She's a lifer. You know, we're ostensibly celebrating the re-release / reimagining of Blood, Women, Roses, which was originally came out under the moniker of Skin, that also was released under the World of Skin as the artist name, and now it's just being re-released as under her own name, Jarboe. It's remastered. It's great. It's awesome. Sounds fantastic. And she's done so much stuff. It's really quite daunting, but incredible. You know, the collaborative album with Neurosis, the stuff with Jezu, the J squared, however you say it. So many records under her own power, as well as, of course, the mighty Swans. We're probably going to talk about Swans. Spoiler alert. But I'm really excited to have her on. This is going to be very cool. So ostensibly Skin, Blood, Women, Roses is the name of the reissue record, just in time for Record Store Day. But we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. Can't wait to get to it. So yeah, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer who has toured and recorded for over 22 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect. Folks that may or may not be household names, but do something very special. This is episode 286. If this is your first time listening to the show, all the archives are at protonicreversal.com and are always free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. But if you'd like to support the show and get episodes sooner, you can give $1 a month to patreon.com/protonicreversal. And if you like the show or even just a single episode, such as this one, please feel free to share it along. Like, subscribe, or post a review. All that helps people find the show, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. All right. So why don't we get down to it? The living Jarboe. Let's go. And with us now is the mighty, the relentless, the living Jarboe. Jarboe, welcome to the show.
Hello.
It's such a pleasure to have
you.
Be
here.
It's such a pleasure to have you. You're a busy lady, and you do a lot of things, and I appreciate that. That has more or less been unabated coming on. These are we calling them reissues? I guess they're kind of reissues. Very interesting.
It's I mean the vinyl is the same audio as the original vinyl. The artwork was reworked with Phil Pulio, and whom I know from Swans, and we made it a little more expressive of the content, so that there's a skin graphic image on the cover, and and also a tint of kind of a blood tint to it, and then on the back there's some hands with blood on them to represent so the theme is more, and the roses are there, so it's more of the theme is represented in the visual. And Phil did a great job, and so it's been remastered and then revised with the art. The CD version has all of the this thing had 12 inches and singles, so those are all on the CD version, which is of course longer. So that's been changed to include all that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there was a remastering process with this as well too, right? Like that was
it's been remastered. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's it's been a little while for some of this stuff. What was it like, kind of going back and revisiting it? Was it sort of like a time travel situation, or did it kind of, were you able to hear it more as art rather than like whatever the experience was?
Well, the interesting thing about hearing yourself in the beginning of professional recordings and professional studios is to note the way that you sang and the way that you expressed yourself and the different tonalities that you use. So that was very interesting for me to hear myself, then. So this thing was recorded in 1986. Yeah. And it came out the same year as Children of God. It was recorded before Children of God, and it kind of informed, I think, the way that Children of God came out, the Swans album. And so it was very interesting to hear. But some of the tonalities are the same from the way I would approach the song now. But then others were more experimental, and so for me to do that now, I would be going into a real heightened state of performance.
Yeah.
So for example, the song Red Rose, extremely high, piercing vocals throughout that. And so that kind of super high, screechy kind of super high kind of stuff, very fragile, like a little girl, that kind of stuff, for me to do that now is more of a go into like a serious theatrical performance mindset instead of it just coming out of me. It's just yeah. So I'm much more, I think the singing is has developed through the years, and so now I know when I'm in character zone and when I am being more of like the full voiced woman tonality compared to the character tonality, if any of that makes sense to anybody. But anyway, so it's very interesting revisiting the vocabulary that I was using.
Well, because voices do change over the years. I mean, at least on some small level, and certainly the person behind it hopefully is changing as well. So that's why I ask about the time travel sort of business because of it, because it can transport. Yeah,
I'm very proud of the cover versions that we did on this. My version of Cry Me a River, and I took that song because that introduced what I would do later with Black Eyed Dog, Can't Find My Way Home. I mean, these kind of ideas of making the song your own. So instead of it being a cover version like you would see in a lounge act somewhere, it became more of an interpretation. So the interpretation of Cry Me a River is, it's pretty intense, and there's a background vocals that are rather subliminal of kind of weeping and moaning, and I think it's a very expressive and heartfelt rendering of that song. And it originally was more of a coy kind of a song, Julie London. So I think that my version is not coy at all.
No, not what I would use to describe it. No, yeah.
No, but it's a very interesting journey. And then 1,000 Years was inspired by the Anne Rice novels I was reading at the time. Yeah. So that's a vampiric narrative. So she is a vampire singing about her being exhausted from just the life, and that her body is a temple stolen from the Lord. So the vampiric theme is what we kind of carried out with the artwork. The Man I Love.
Yeah, which is the Gershwin. Like it's like right, if I remember correctly.
So that's done in a very breathy tonality.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of fragile and breathy, but it's deliberately back to back with Come Out. And so, so there's sort of a queer element there with, the singing about, the man I love and building a little home, and who would leave that, and then backed with Come Out, which, is a lot more bombastic and deliberately meant to be rather humorous. So, because it's just so bold and brazen. And then, so very juxtaposition, the juxtaposition of the personas, the characters.
Right. And I'm thinking that, during the time of that, the World of Skin record, I mean, that was around the Children of God time. So you're still like opening the Swan shows, like doing blackmail, like to a loop. Right. I mean, along those lines, as far as just being. Unadorned.
It was, I created a cyclical, sound on my keyboard, and so I could get it to kind of repeat. And so I would just, primarily I would just open, I would sing that alone.
Yeah.
And of course, the interesting thing is the very first song that I did, not performing the keyboard, but singing, the very first song I did that was in New York City, and I walked in on stage alone, and I did blackmail to the loop, but it was but they processed it. We processed it to where the sound man, and then what Michael and I created with the keyboard, we processed it to where it was a lot more experimental sounding than just a simple notes. And there was a lot of background vocals I had recorded before that I kind of put to the lead vocal, but again, completely alone. And so that was really great, because that prepared me for what was going to happen in the group, which was I would frequently come out alone and start the show. And then, of course, be the intermission or relief, I guess it was, from the loud music in the middle of the show, and then frequently would come out at the end as the encore of the show. So it was a great juxtaposition of the two of us, the dynamic with that, and it really culminated with, to me, as my most favorite moment in the entire duration of being in Swans was doing my version, my interpretation vocally for I Crawled. And that ran through all the different voices. It ran through the different characters, the different tonalities. And so I turned it into a drama piece telling a story. And so at the end, I go into sub voice, which is extremely brutal, low, almost like today you would call it like a metal voice, very hard, very low. Yeah. And that was all done with performance. None of that was effects. It was done with just the controlling what the body can do. So she goes from breathy to, fragile little girl lost to being, how do we put it? Demonized by the beast at the end. So that to me was great, to be able to showcase all those voices, and it was just fitting, for all the training, all the practice throughout the years to do that live, and just to be able to run with it. That was great.
Yeah, I mean, and do you think, is that something that, and knowing the type of performances, especially that you're doing with Swans, and that intensity, is you have to like almost draw a contrast to a certain degree, but there's also the challenges of, PA systems that maybe aren't always up to snuff as well, right? So, I mean, was that something that you really found that you had to give a lot of thought to, and did that kind of...
For me, touring in Swans, and even touring now, touring is all about the next show. Yeah. And so I'm always ready. And so what that means is I finish the show, I am immediately going to sleep and getting up and eating well, taking vitamins, doing a workout as best I can in the room, hotel room, whatever. And so I'm not one of these people that kind of has an excessive lifestyle when they're touring. I never have. And so I never had any problems at all doing that visceral of performance. The voice kept intact, everything kept intact. And, and when you have the ability to kind of muster up like all of your focus, all of your energy, all of your adrenaline to what you're there to do, then you have no problems. You just have to have that focus come in like a beam, and just direct it. into your performance, and all the energy and all the power comes. It's kind of an amazing process.
Yeah, and you know, certainly can't argue with the results, but it's as much a lifestyle choice, right, as much as anything else to a certain degree. As far
as you know, there were days, like I can remember, I think it was Paris, and one of the British papers, you know, the weekly papers that were so important in those days for musicians. Yeah. They sent over, just journalists were amazing. I mean, they went to, Oxford. I mean, they were they were extremely articulate, and those were incredible men. But anyway, they sent someone over to us there, and we did photo shoots, and the article that came out, the journalist made a point of saying, and Jarboe is sitting here with her, 15 bottles of supplements and vitamins. And of course it's true. So you're lugging this. I mean, for a while I was lugging around, weights. And then the band got together. They gave me like water weights so that you could fill them up in the venue with water instead of lugging around weights.
Oh, nice.
And then I had one of those pulley stretch things that you could do, but it was always about looking for ways to exercise and to stay in shape in that group, because the touring was extremely hard, just night after night after night, long distances. And I mean, frequently it was just sleeping in the vehicle, and then and then I think the last tour, one of the last two tours I did in Swans, I wrote in my journal, this is the sleep or eat tour.
You get one or the other. Yeah.
So I always chose sleep.
Yeah. Given the choice between the two, sure, yeah.
I think musicians can relate to that.
Oh yeah. Yes, it's exactly. A little too much sometimes. The idea with, and originally it was just called Skin, right? And then it kind of became World of Skin.
Well, what happened was discussing different names for it, and then it came out over in England. And then we were going to bring it out in the United States, and there was already someone else calling themselves that. So it got into some kind of legal territory, and where they were willing, it was like, I think it was, they said we could buy the name or something, and it got kind of complicated.
Right, buy the name, we can't buy lunch. You kidding me?
Yeah. So I just said, well, we should just do both of them, release them together, that Michael's solo album, Shame, Humility, Revenge, and then mine, which is what they both were. But we'd worked on each other's. I mean, I did a lot of, vocals and keyboards and stuff on Shame, Humility, Revenge. So it was, they were both, kind of relating in that way. But so we decided just to combine them. And that was my idea, to combine them, and then we just released them under that name, so because we couldn't use the other name. And so now, in discussing this about a year ago with Michael, he had said, "Why don't you just go ahead and put this out on your own?" Because he released released some of his solo stuff alone, like Drainland, and so I'm doing it. That's why I'm doing it on my own. So it's under my name. So I'm incorporating the name of the project, and I don't want to get into any conflict with artists that are currently using that other name. And there are quite a few of them. There's some based in England that go up, that use the name Skin for their work. So I decided just to release it and just to keep it simple and release it keep everything simple. Right. Underneath my own name.
Well, at this point you got such a huge body of work anyway. That it almost makes more sense to have it be, I guess they call it retconning, right? To retcon it into being our Jarboe joint.
Yeah. So that's cool. I'm very happy to do that. I don't know what will happen to the material in 10 Songs for Another World. I guess I'll find that out later and see what's going to happen with that. Because that has some really cool songs on it. So
definitely. So,
but I am doing with a company in Greece. I am doing the Sacrificial Cake is coming out on vinyl, and that hasn't been on vinyl for a long time.
That was like 18, right? That was alternate.
It was
tentacles?
originally released on 1995, and that was originally released in a package with Drainland, Michael's album, and so that was on Alternative Tentacles.
Yeah.
So now that he's put out Drainland on his own, so I'm putting out Sacrificial Cake on my own with the Circle Music, which is in Athens, Greece. So I'm pretty excited for that to be coming out too. So I'm going to keep on putting out, selective albums into vinyl, because there's a demand for vinyl now, and the fans really want this elaborate packaging and colored vinyl and all this kind of stuff. So the Skin, Blood, Women, Roses. I'm really excited about this. I chose this color. It's called Dracula.
Oh, nice!
It's like a transparent. It's a transparent black and red.
It's like they knew you were coming.
Perfect. It's the perfect color for this album.
Yeah. It's in the name, right? You got blood in the name.
Yeah. And Sacrificial Cake is going to be Lavender, because the song Lavender is on there. And Lavender is, when I look at my streaming and all that with my reports that I get, that is like wildly popular. That's like the number one song. It's like incredible. Everybody loves Lavender. Yeah. So that's going to be Lavender, the color of the vinyl.
Nice. That's awesome. That's great. Well, yeah, and you hit an important point that it's interesting that vinyl is not only back, but like the limited edition collector's like art item aspect of it has become such a normalized thing, which is great when you're trying to keep
it is. And it's funny because I remember I don't know what year this was. Not to name drop, but I was talking with a well-known musician named Maynard James Keenan, and he was at my house, and we were talking about the problem of where everything was going with the digital and artists making money. And he said that's why they were going to do this extremely elaborate art, because the idea was to make the physical representation, the physical album, to be collectible, so people would buy it. So that was a way to kind of compete with the download and streaming that seemed to be taking over at the time. And so artists were wondering how they were going to compete with that. So I think that kind of attitude was in a lot of musicians' heads. And so I think that's kind of was given birth to this, making these elaborate kind of objects.
Yeah, I mean, that comes up quite often on this show, and not just on this show, but, in my own life and music as well, that everything is instantly available. And if you look at it from the perspective of being able to reach people you never would have been able to, that's wonderful, but you still got to keep the train moving. So
yeah, and so my interpretation of doing it was to just give everything I had, such that I started painting covers and creating personalized everything I did myself. And it, and the height of it, I was talking about this one the other day, the height of it was when Soundtracks to the Blind came out, and I realized that the albums that I was on, and it put so much into myself, that I could do art versions. And so I started painting those, and they got more and more elaborate. Initially they were more abstract, and then they got to the point where they were like really serious works of art. and I spent weeks on every single one. And so they were shipped all over the world. I mean, people were buying them all over the world. And this was, of course, before the pandemic. And so the mail service was still working perfectly. And
weren't
so
those
I was able
the days?
to ship
Good
things.
Lord.
Yeah. They would just ship these giant box sets, 4 albums, and all the heavy packing you have to do so that they arrive safely. Now I was shipping them everywhere. And I was just, my life was painting. That's all I was painting. And so, I'm the kind of artist that I'm willing to give that much, and people were very understanding. They were like, sure, we'll wait for 1 month for it to be shipped.
You're getting something super unique. Yeah, there's nothing like it in the world. Yeah,
and so that's again the same kind of idea. So rather than mass producing it. Everything is one of a kind.
Yeah, and I think that's a great push for artists that has happened, because Spotify is not going to be able to do that, you know.
Well, then that springboarded to people asking me to do paintings for them, and so then I had to buy canvases and invest in paint, a lot more paints and all kinds of stuff, and so then that has turned into that now, where I still get these commissions and do these. And they'll just say anything that you feel like doing, anything that you're inspired to do at the time, just do it. So I'm also doing that now, and I didn't think I was going to be going in that direction, but so the painting and the physical art is kind of going along now with the audio. And of course, another thing I do is I'm one of the advisors on the board for the National Parks Art Foundation, and so
wow, cool.
So I look at the proposals for artists wanting to do residencies, and so that's helped because I get to I have an intimate view into what other artists are doing to try to get these residencies. So the whole art aspect has become kind of part of my life now. So it's not just it's not only writing music and words.
Well, but how cool to
recording.
have somebody. Yeah, but how cool to have somebody that actually is an artist involved with that, right? I mean, you'd like to think that would be a baseline thing when you're talking about that kind of situation, but it certainly is not. So that's actually really awesome, and that's something that that may not get like the glamour headlines necessarily, but that's allows you to do some great work there too, and then that's there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, I don't like. I realized I don't really care for this idea of I may get there, but the idea of things being prints and mass produced, I still cling to a very DIY aesthetic with it. I still cling to this I made it myself kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
and I may get to when I finally get a book out of selected memoirs and writings, that will have to be probably taken to a professional printer and do it, something like that. But I do prefer something that's been touched, by an actual person's hand instead of a mass produced thing for art.
Well, it's the one thing you can't just push a button on the computer and get, right? I mean, everything else in the world you can, but you just can't do that. Like, I mean, nothing's ever going to be able to replace that. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's awesome.
Oh, good.
And it certainly keeps you busy, I'm sure. When did you actually take up with the painting? Because is that something that you've done casually your whole life, or is that more of a recent development?
My father started me in that direction. He bought me, an easel and all this kind of stuff. But what's interesting was he was really pushing the whole charcoal thing on me. And so the last few things I've done, I've been experimenting using charcoal, and I'm really liking it because the shading that you can do and the subtle nuance that you can give is something I'm really enjoying. So I've kind of made this journey from oils, acrylics, watercolors, and now into charcoal and pencil. And that's something I'm really excited to explore. And so I'm kind of loving that now. And of course, that's getting away from color. So, but one of the things coming out, I did, this band approached me. It's a collective. It's an electronic collective called Black Leather Jesus. And they're based in the United States. And anyway, they wrote me and asked me if I want to do a split with them, And so I decided what a perfect time. Since they're electronic and experimental, I thought what a perfect time to do a crazy remix of Walls, which is something I did before I joined Swans.
Yeah.
And and so I remixed it with separate tracks that I had, and I remixed it and just made it completely different. And and so that's on one side, and their thing's on the other side. And when I asked them about what kind of art are you thinking about for this split, and I said I could submit something, and they loved what I sent, and so that's going to be one of these charcoal things. It's going to be on the cover, so I'm very, very excited because that'll be, it'll be cool, like something that I drew is going to be on the cover of it. So that'll be neat, And so that was that. It's a charcoal. It's an energy field. The energy field came from a letter that I got asking me if I would lay my hands, on something, laying on of hands. And so I said, well, I could put my hand on a piece of paper and trace it, and then I can fetishize it for you. I can add textures and colors and chakras, whatever you want. So like, oh yeah. So that's what I do now. So it's literally this energy field of put your hand on there, and then you just really shoot every possible vibe of your body onto it, right? And so you can tell them you gave your energy to it. So the energy field, one of the energy fields, is on the cover of the split with Black Leather Jesus, and
nice.
So that's pretty exciting.
It's a literal laying of hands too, which is great.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Not figurative, literal, which is great.
Well, that's kind of a theme. When I did this performance years ago, I got this work in progress grant, and I wanted to do rock theater because I thought, well, I have the money, so I'm now going to do rock theater, and have a bunch of people on stage. So I think we had like 15 or so people on stage, and so it ended with this out demons out ceremony. It was really fun, and so we pushed our hands out, and chanted to the audience, and then Kimber of the Voluptuous Heart, Karen Black, she came shimmying out and as like the demon, it was
oh
really
sure, yeah.
so I really love the idea of that, so we ended the show chanting that, and we had our hands up, and so what we did was we came out and we actually put our hands up onto the forehead, to cast it out, so I've had this theme of the hands before, in my work, and of course, Blood on Your Hands is on on the album that's coming out on Consoling Sounds. So that's kind of a theme, I guess.
And that one's a Record Store Day release, right? The Skin and Blood
Record Store Day in Europe, is that the same day as, I don't know, I guess
it seems like Record Store Day comes earlier every year.
Yeah.
Good question. I don't know. We get a real-time fact check on that. So Saturday, April 23rd.
Yeah. I love this label because they have a wonderful record store in Ghent, and I was able to go to that when I toured with Father Murphy, and it's amazing. It's like all this kind of blonde wood, and they have a coffee bar in there, and it's really, really cool. They're very cool people.
Nice,
yeah.
Very cool. So I think that there's a lot to be said, and has been said about Record Store Day for sure. But I think this is exactly the kind of release that sort of embodies the spirit of what that is meant to be, which is like celebrating something kind of unique and cool. And maybe you're like familiar, maybe you're not, but it's like presented in this new and interesting way for the people that it's for. And I think that there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, and there are people, I know some people that in Europe that bought the original, and they're interested in this one because just because it's a commentary and a revision, and so I think that I feel really good about it. I think it's going to be very cool, and of course the remastering is very impressive. So yeah.
Do you find that I'm thinking back to the collaboration with Neurosis now? That's such a cool collab, and that for me it embodied the two great tastes that taste great together sort of mindset of like, oh yeah, that like it made sense when I heard about it, right? Was that something that did that come very naturally? Like, how did you approach that stuff?
That's an interesting story because I was driving along late at night in my truck years ago, and this song came on college radio, and I turned it up because it resonated with me, and it had a woman's kind of background vocals, and the music wasn't typically, I would say, wasn't typically rock. It was more textural, so I liked it because it felt Swans-like to me. Yeah, and I called the station because I couldn't, and it turned out to be Neurosis.
Oh, fantastic.
So I told Michael about it. About it. I was all excited. You got to hear this song. You got to hear this. So they they played. We were in Atlanta then. They played Atlanta. They played downtown Atlanta, and we went down there to the show, and met them in the dressing room. And I knew they were coming from California, which is where they were living at the time. So at the time, I happened to be growing hot peppers in the garden I had, and so I brought these hot peppers to the dressing room to give to them, because I thought, oh, well, they'll like that because they're from California.
Yeah.
and they like, hot peppers. And because I know Michael liked salsa and hot peppers. So they were thrilled, they loved the hot peppers, and they're all happy to meet us. And it just was a great, sense of friendship. And so that's how it started. And then I think there was some conversations about management and booking people, and so Swans wound up working with the same booking people that were working Neurosis at the time, and so then we just kept in touch, and this is pre everybody sending emails, so Steve Bontil was sending me letters from the road, physical letters from the road, and it was on this really cool tribal. Custom tribal stationery that they had. And so we just kept in touch. And so basically the reason why, and we wanted to work together. And the reason why it took years for it to actually happen was because they were never off the road. I mean, they must have toured for 2 years straight. I mean, they were always touring.
Especially that time. Yeah.
So finally, when they stopped touring was when had a break from touring. Steve contacted me and said, "Hey, let's do that now." So that's really kind of the story of how it happened. And the interesting thing about the rehearsals for the 6 shows that we did live was I was fascinated to see how they rehearsed, and they rehearsed in a studio in Oakland.
Oh yeah,
and
it used to be down the hall from us. Actually, I know it well.
well, what was interesting was how disciplined and how incredibly,
yes.
I guess I would say, mathematically timed everything was. It was a different way of working than the way I had worked in Swans rehearsing. It was, counting right down to a specific place. Change, counting right. So when you're doing vocals, like say the heavy panting on within and all this kind of stuff, and receive when it's more of a bluesy vocal, there was no room for kind of being in the moment and feeding off of the crowd, as it were, or responding to the crowd. You are having to be fully aware of what you're doing, because it's going to change. So in other words, it got to the point where, like the breathing and stuff like that, I was literally having to put my hands behind my back and count, with my fingers, like,
right. yeah, totally,
like ready for because then it immediately goes into that little piano part. So you're having to literally give this heavy, panting live on stage, in and out, just nonstop, and then boom. Go to the little piano part.
yeah, because it's like a high wire act almost to a certain degree, right?
Yeah. So when you're recording that, obviously you stop, and then go back and do the little singy part, So in this, doing it live, it was like, oh, boom. so that was really, really incredible how they work live. Just so disciplined, and it's very much like architecture to me. So
definitely. And I mean, can you tell me a little bit about one of my favorites on that one is a race. Like it's so intense. I mean, not that the whole thing, not that the rest of it's lightweight, but that's one that kind of speaks to mind. That do you remember anything specifically about that?
Yeah. Song? Well, the thing about that album lyrically was, it was all completely personal and taken from, my journal, my diary entries of my life. And so it was people I was dealing with, and situations that were part of my life then. So in a way, it was that particular track was almost like a kind of like a vitriolic purge in a way, and so that was very helpful. And I think that I don't think there's anything self-indulgent about that, because to me, what I've learned in music is that the more that you do work like that, the more personal, the more intimate it is. Even if you abstract it, you're not mentioning somebody's name. You just then the audience seems to really respond to it. I mean, they're like, "You're talking to me. You're speaking to my life," because those are universal experiences and feelings. So that's my take on that. And I mean, the song, there's a song on there, it's about the death of my father, and then there's another song on there about the death of my mother, and my mother was a devout Roman Catholic, so that song has the Hail Mary prayer in it, and so the song about my father was just about who he was, this incredible memory, this incredible educated, scholarly person who had to have surgery for a brain cancer, for a tumor to be removed from his brain. And so when they rolled him out of the operating room, I leaned over to him and hit my ear to his mouth, and he said, burning. And so these are completely, diaristic, like real words, and within is from living at the bunker, which is what we call the rehearsal space, the raw, unfinished space that we lived in New York, and the technically 9th Avenue B, but the entrance was on 6th Street, so it's really 6th Street, and all we have is this little slit of a window. And so people would walk by the night people, and
yes,
the drug dealers, the pimps, the prostitutes, all this, and they would walk by, and a lot of people would be mumbling to themselves, because that was the thing that I noticed that everybody did on the sidewalks in New York, in the Lower East Side and the East Village in those days. They would be humming to themselves, and so people would be coming up from Avenue C and beyond. They'd walk by our little window and going to B and up to A, which was where the action was on A, and so that I'd get little glimmers of expressions and words. And I would immediately write them down, because I realized that that's what writers do. I mean, they talk about real life. They study, they study real people and create characters out of those. So that's where that came from. Initially, was a man mumbling up the street saying, if God wants to take me, he will. He'll just take me.
Yeah.
And so that became the main repetitive, and I did that for the rap version of Girl Come Out on this record coming out, the CD version. This was the rap. The rap was a man talking about literally using a gun, and so we interpreted that to mean an adult item.
right. He's maybe a different variety of gun. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, but I mean, originally it was just me writing down what I heard, which was kind of terrifying.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's and yeah, it's interesting that picking up those bits and pieces of ephemera and kind of putting it through your own kaleidoscope. Right. I mean, that's sort of...
Yes.
that's
yeah, writers do it all the time. Yeah. So it's, and I think that's what makes a good writer. And I think actors do it as well. When I do character study to portray someone in a film. So it's important to kind of be aware. And the more aware that you are, the more that you look and listen around you, instead of just internal, then I think it opens portals.
I 100%, and I think that's both very cool and very heavy, and something worthy of respect to think about. I want to speak a little bit about. I guess it started with Storm coming on, the song with Jesu, but then it was was it J squared? Is that what it ended up being called? But
J2.
J2, yeah.
J2, yeah.
Represented as J squared. But tell me first about Storm coming. I'm a big Jesu fan. In fact, I've been dancing around with Justin Broderick for coming on this damn show for like 4 months, and eventually we're going to do it. But how did you first meet up with Justin? And
I love him. He's very
great.
sweet, and I love him. Well, I heard, I forget what magazine this was. It was a magazine, and I did one of those, what you call blindfold listening things.
Oh, sure.
Where
you don't know what it is, but they send you stuff to listen to. Yeah.
So they sent me this music, and so I was talked about it, and then sometimes I would, if I recognized, the sound, I would say, "Is it so and so?" So one of the things that they sent was Jesu, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, it was so beautiful. I couldn't believe it. It just was like pulling me to pieces. I was so moved by it. And so I wrote, what I felt about it. So I think that may have put us, me or him, and I think it kind of put us on the radar together.
Yeah.
And then I think, how did it happen? Then it seemed like somehow there was some kind of conversation about doing something together, as I recall. And so it was like write words for this and sing it. And it just, the music, it just came out just so, when it comes out like that fast. And again, that was diaristic. I mean, those words could have been on the Neurosis album because that is really true words from my journal about living in the East Village.
Yeah, more people yelling things in the street, right?
that is exactly what it was like. We had a steel door with a police lock on the inside and 2 deadbolts.
Yeah.
And so the police lock, if people don't know, you pull it out like a tension bar, and you slide 2 big metal bars across it. That's how dangerous it was to live there.
Yeah.
And so, it's true. You'd open the door, and it would be interesting. You'd open the door, and there would be all these, professional, I guess, like umbrellas and lights, whatever, because they were shooting a fashion shoot right there. So
it's not talking about a study in dichotomy.
So there'd be like a model standing there in front of the graffiti.
Yeah.
And you go, "Oh, excuse me, I live here. I'll get out of your way."
Yeah.
So that would happen, or you would open the door and there would be a man urinating with his pants down, urinating.
Yeah.
So
roll the dice. Every
single day there would be puddles of urine and hypodermic needles, and I mean, it was unbelievable. The sea of danger waiting for you outside the door. And Michael had a sign on the door that said, to keep door closed, don't just leave it casually open, death outside. And then he had a drawing of a skull.
Right.
So death outside.
I'm laughing, but in solidarity. I've been in that situation before.
Yeah. So everything I said there, be walking, and believe me, I dressed like, I wore baggy black coats. I was never showing off anything up there. I wore caps, covered my head. Really, I covered everything, even in the hot of summer. I was never attracting attention from any men. And so you'd be walking back from the post office carrying, because I was the schlepper, I was the one that answered the fan mail. I was the one that picked up the stuff being shipped to us. I was the one shipping stuff off, promos, that kind of thing. So I'd be walking back from the 14th Street post office, and it was inevitable. Some man would open the car door, ask me to come in. Yeah. And they would say all kinds of things to me that are just XXX, they would say to me. And it is unbelievable, just unbelievable harassment from men, just nonstop harassment from men when I lived there. And so it was just, it's like, and then, there was one time when at night I had to go to the store and buy something, and these men started chasing me, and so you do this thing where you hide behind the curb of the bumper of a car. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then they run by, and then you wait and you go the other way. And this is like so yeah. So that was completely true about those words for Storm Coming On. Is my God, it couldn't be more perfect description of living at that address in those years.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, it's like a casual brutality. Like, people just sort of accept it, but good Lord, I mean, that's
yeah, and
so
then
heavy.
so of course you're thinking to yourself, how did I get to this? Like, look, this is my life, like it's like I'm living in a war zone of dealers and debauchery.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
the interesting thing was I was studying a type of boxing before I moved to New York, and I remember the things the teacher said about the fingers that stay together, slay together. And so every time
that's great. I love that.
every time I walked around and I wasn't wearing gloves, my fingers would always be formed like you're ready to do a karate chop.
Oh, wow.
And then Michael taught me the bottle trick. I guess it comes from the prison yards. So you take a bottle and you walk in the middle of the street and you're just kind of swinging it. So it's kind of like, you ready for this?
Right.
Just try it. So I also did that. And so I walked in the middle of the street, swinging a bottle. And we would be recording in studios, in the city. And I would walk back, and like say over on Broadway, and I'd walk back. And this saved me many, many times, this swinging the bottle in the middle of the street. And no one messed with me. I never got mugged. I never got attacked. And yet everyone I knew had, turned the corner, they'd have a knife at their throat. I mean, you can't let your guard down. And that was another thing the teacher taught me and taught the class was, you cannot let your guard down. You can't be, casually walking along, arm in arm, rosy-dozy. You can't do that.
Right.
Yeah, you send a signal with your body language if you can be mugged or not.
Yeah.
And so I think that teacher in that class, I think that really helped me when I moved up there.
Wow. Yeah. And it's crazy that just, having internalized that is just part of your life, as this, that's just how you get from point A to point B to, accomplish, these, in some cases, very mundane tasks.
Well, yeah. And of course I never did any drugs and never drank any alcohol. And so I was always completely alert and sober. I never went to the bar scene. Yeah. I never made those. And all the other, the musicians would finish rehearsal and they would just, pile out of there into the bars. I mean, that was a whole lifestyle up there for musicians. And I was like the lonely dork, the uncool. I was always the uncool dork, because I would stay behind and be working on my solo material. Yeah. Which, became like 13 Masks and Beautiful People Limited and Sacrifice. And I would stay behind and would just be working on a little Casio, in the living area because the rehearsal space would be unbearable, full of all the cigarette smoke. And, and of course I didn't do that either. So I'd be sitting in there, alone at night, little headphones on, working on the Casio, creating music. Right. So that was me. And I didn't understand the lifestyle. I didn't understand the appeal of drinking in bars. And so, I felt I was an outsider. I guess I'll put it that way. I was an outsider.
Well, it seems like you kind of work best in solitude and where you could have some focus on whatever it is you're working on to a certain degree.
Well, also, I was talking about this to a woman who was from the neighborhood, and she's now moved to Seattle. She's a nurse now, and we were talking about the fact that the decisions that you make when you're younger, like they catch up with you later on. And you may not think that the smoking and the drinking and any drugs you take, you may not think that that's going to catch up with you. You'll maybe just perfectly fine. You're creating, you're performing, it's going to catch up with you. It's going to catch up with you. There's any number of people you can ask about that we knew and may still know. And, you can see they catch up with you, and it's kind of incredible that some people live as long as they did, without really radically changing their lifestyle. And it catches up with you. Your teeth will go, your voice will go, your hearing will go, and you're more vulnerable to things like COVID, And so I think that it's something to remember, that you may think it's cool now, but it's going to catch up with you if you want to maintain your ability to do your music or whatever it is you're doing. Then you might want to think about exercising, and that sounds so boring. Well, I've always done that.
No, but you're dead on. I mean, right?
I've been, So I was running. I'm a runner. I was running, and then when the lockdown happened, the parks were closed, and I couldn't do my running, and so I got the Rogue Echo bike, and so that's great because it's exercising your upper body and your lower body, and so now I get up, I get on that thing immediately, and I get my workout over with every single morning. And so it's like it's just a mental attitude that you have about how you're gonna live, and what is the price you're paying. So I'm all about exercise and supplements and
well, and being around for the distance, right? Being around to continue to be in the
getting at least 8 to 9 hours of sleep. And there's a way of doing it. When I toured with Father Murphy, I was so happy to find out they were the same, and they always made sure that we had short drives and that we were able to get a good night's sleep before the next performance. So this is the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, as you mentioned, probably was not the case on those early Swans tours with the sleep or eat tours.
No, and then the very first tour I did, when I was basically the helper, the carrying
the
stuff,
roadie and the
carrying, and then and even holding on to things so they could party, staying behind and holding on to things. And I did that later on too. The person, like, I can remember, pulling in all these guitar cases and trying to keep the elevator doors open.
Oh my God, yes. Those who have not done it, it's not easy.
And they keep trying to close, and I'm like, come on, trying to get 7, 8 guitar cases pulling in there, because you're taking them up to your room so that everybody else can go out. And then there was a time when I had to hold on to somebody's passport, and then it's just kind of like, so that's you're like mom, I guess, your mom.
Right, exactly.
But it's the very first tour, they were in a like one of those low kind of vans, not a station wagon, but not really a van, like a low kind of a in between vehicle.
I call them doorstops. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And that's when I realized that there I was in a window with the windows rolled up in this vehicle, and every single person was smoking.
Ugh.
And that was unbelievable. I mean, I was in the back, where the windows wouldn't roll down, and so that was the kind of stuff, that I remember of going through is the lifestyle was, the choices were really kind of shocking when I did that tour. I went over there with just a backpack and bike shorts and a unitard and wrestling boots.
Nice.
And I had a short, kind of like a buzz cut. So, I mean, I looked like I did not look like I was metal or rock or any of that stuff.
Right,
I look like the wholesome, with a slight punk edge to it. And so that was a real eye-opening tour for me.
Well, and you got to see those loud, sweaty, shirtless men, doing just grinding away their thing too, which is such a dichotomy.
I treasure those memories and that experience because there were cool things like there were some venues that they played. I guess they were like state-funded art venues or something, and in certain countries. And I can remember like they were completely unknown. No one even knew what the music was going to be like, and I guess promoters didn't even know how to promote it. I don't know, but there was a few times when I was the sole member of the audience, and so I had the luxurious experience of laying on the floor.
Right, you get a private show.
Well, like listening to the Incredibles bass and sub frequencies coming up through your body, and that was kind of amazing. Really, like really appreciating the show with no distractions, and the shows were incredible. I mean, they were mind-blowingly great. And every single one, I didn't see a single show that I didn't think was just brilliant. And so there were, and then the other thing was they were, I think, basically stranded in Berlin for a while, a couple of weeks, I don't remember. And so I had flown over there, and we got to stay at Blixa Bargeld's home and in Berlin, and that was really great, getting to know Einstürzen to Neubauten and hanging out with them, and of course I was a huge fan of Neubauten, and so this was like a real thrill, to get to know them. And I was there when Swans did their show at the Loft, and they were opening for Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and so that was cool, and getting to meet them and to they shared the same dressing room, and then I had an intimate, view of that show, and then that would later happen with the Kings of Independence tour when they were on that tour, and so so these are really incredible experiences that I had, even though it was hard and rough kind of life. They were privileged moments for me. I consider those to be privileges, and it was an honor.
So then, coming at it from having such an intimate knowledge of the music and being such a part of it from the outside, and then like you came in like it was like first with like what the samples, and then like later keyboard and vocals, right? Like it was sort of like a gradual transition into Swans. Right?
Yeah, I did the blood-curdling scream on I think it's Time Is Money. That was the first vocal I ever did in Swans, and
which is up there with Careful with That Axe, Eugene, as far as I'm concerned, for like excellent screams.
well, it's kind of interesting that was the first thing, and then the last thing live was the same kind of approach. It wasn't a scream, but the hardcore growl on it. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how it's bookend. But
right, exactly.
I think, and of course, he did ask me to do some stuff on the Seer, so that was so that's in there too. But so I was working with a 16-second digital delay rather by Electro-Harmonix.
The big rectangular one, right? The big
the very first one that they ever made. Actually not that. Yeah, but it wasn't that big. It was, but I had all these cassettes of those that I was making and using them in experimental kind of work, because I was heading in the direction then pre-Swans of doing art gallery work with voices and these cassettes of these samples, or they were just loops that they continue to degrade, and so you add layers and layers and layers, and you could make interesting things with that. So I gave a lot of those I brought them over on the '84 tour, and they were listening to them, and I offered those that they could use, and so it kind of started with an entry to that. I'd also made a cassette of me singing all these different accents and different kind of songs and characters. I also submitted that. So I basically submitted, auditioned or whatever, to be considered as a audio component of that project. And So it took, I think, it took a while, like when they started doing the Dollar series for Some Bizarre.
Right,
That's when
yeah.
I started
Yeah.
recording with them in the studio. And then the first song, if you can call it that, on Holy Money. And then the B-side, first version of Blackmail, which was me playing the Casio. And then he added Al playing this dirge bass note. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
But that was one of my favorite versions. So it started with the live, samples and that I'd made and sounds and vocals. And then I wanted, at the time, he was talking about adding a second bass player. So I was then looking at bass guitars. I was going to learn how to play the bass guitar.
Right.
And then that changed to when Harry Crosby left the group, then and he was playing sounds, rolling them up and down and from a cassette deck on stage with a foot pedal. So then Michael said, well, now Harry's gone, so instead of using the cassettes with the sounds, we'll actually make those sounds. So that's when I investigated the Ensoniq Mirage and bought the Ensoniq Mirage and a very expensive road case for it.
Yeah,
and then
the notoriously sturdy Mirage. Yeah, exactly. I know.
And that's what opened the door to that, and of course I was telling someone the other day about this. The problem was there's no monitor. I mean, it was all by ear, adjusting these parameters to create your sound. It was a nightmare. And the thing came with a big, thick technical notebook,
right,
explaining all these
like
numbers and
manual.
parameters.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
and you had to load the operating system.
Well, it was on a diskette, right? It was like like a disc or something.
Yeah, with the diskette. And so then load in your sounds. And the problem with this was, in those days, with the venues that we play, we drew basically all of the juice from the building.
Oh, no.
We drew the entire juice. So we blew the fuse box over and over and over again. And so the problem would be, you'd have to wait, and then it took a long time for this operating system to load. And then you'd have to put in your diskette. So you can imagine that the electricity is constantly going off.
Oh my God, every time you got to reload your sounds. Oh no.
It was hell. It was hell. And of course you have to maintain, I always believe maintaining decorum on stage.
Yeah.
Because you're a performer. So of course you can't show the audience that you're freaking out.
Yeah.
So you just calmly, without looking like you're panicked, load in the operator. And then as soon as you get the sounds in there, boom, the electricity would go off again.
Oh, man, what a drag.
There was a show in L.A. That it was so frustrating with this electricity situation that I just gave up and I just sat on the side of the stage. I was like, fuck it, I give up.
I'm done.
It's like, this damn thing is not going to work. It was so funny. And then I remember one time Rob Collins, who was in England, he was the one that was working for Some Bizarre at the time, and that was K422, and then later Product Inc. for Mute. He was the one that said to me in those days, why don't you just make the sounds with your mouth,
like beatboxing? Yeah, sure.
I'm sure I could have somehow approached that like that.
Yeah.
But so I was, and then of course taking the thing throughout Europe, that didn't get me started because it's also sensitive, was also sensitive to cold.
Oh no.
And so we were traveling through the Alps in a blizzard, and and so and we played venues in parts of Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
In 1987, when we did these shows there that were let's say not exactly on the up and up in terms of the government. And so we would do these shows throughout Eastern Europe. And, we would rain down the ceiling, the paint chips would rain down and get inside the circuitry. and mess it up. And then I learned to put a tarp, like a tent, over top of the keyboard because, like strange drops of water and moisture in the venue would come down and damage the circuitry. So it was a very sensitive and inappropriate instrument to take on tour, especially in Eastern Europe and through funky kind of venues in the United States.
Well, and now it's easy, right? Because the things are not meant to necessarily just be a studio-only instrument. Like you can have a keyboard, and of course you'd bring it on tour, and it wouldn't have to say boot off a diskette.
Oh yeah, so we moved from, and of course it's kind of like the Coke bottle in the movie that drops on from the plane. When taking that thing through parts of Eastern Europe, no one had seen anything like that before. They would come up on stage and look at it and examine it and ask me questions. And so that was kind of cool, like to show, something bizarre like that in a part of the world that, it was new. I mean, it was a brand new device, But when we just decided just to have the slave, just like a Yamaha or just a regular keyboard, and then it would access the sounds through the rack mount with the sampler, and with the processing of the MIDI verb and all that stuff, full rack mount access, that changed everything. I mean, that made it easy because you weren't relying on this installing this operating system and all this stuff to get your sounds. So I left that initial instrument as soon as I could. And it was big and heavy and valuable in those days. It was expensive. And, I took it into my hotel room every single night. And so playing places like Amsterdam, where the staircase was straight up, sliding that thing on my stomach like a snake up the steps. I'd be like pushing it, inching it up, and of course it could fall back and kill me at any time, but just because you're literally going straight up.
Yeah.
So you had to kind of push and get it into the hotel room because it was deemed I could never, even if the van was backed with the back doors against a flat wall. That didn't exist in some places, like in Amsterdam, where we stayed, this particular place that we always stayed. You parked along the canal. There wasn't any wall to protect the back of the van, and so I'd have to bring the thing into the Quentin Hotel, it was called. I would have to push the thing up the stairs and bring it into my tiny room.
Oh God, I'm exhausted just hearing about that. That's so rough.
Lift weights.
Yeah, I was gonna say, good thing you're in shape. Yeah, that's the glamour stuff right there. That's what they don't tell you. That's the glamour stuff. It really tests your dedication for wanting to do something, right?
Well, it was beautiful when we finally had the means to have an actual roadie, to where I didn't have to undo all the cables and load everything up myself. That was a really beautiful thing, and I have nothing but complete respect and adore roadies because when you do the show and then to have to do that as well, it can be pretty exhausting.
Yeah, and it's let's say it's an unsung profession. Let's put that way, because that's absolutely the case. We
had, speaking of roadies, Hank Fury, the roadie on the 97 tour, he went on to become a roadie for, bands like the Rolling Stones and Madonna. And, he is responsible for getting me in to see some of these incredible performances, and not just any ticket, like very expensive, luxurious tickets.
Oh, nice.
So nice. I really, I love the roadies.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's yeah. I mean, talk about dedication, especially I'm thinking of the run up to that Children of God era. Like, it had to be like the crowds were probably somewhat rowdy, I would imagine as well. Like, maybe
yeah,
not, but
yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing I have to mention in terms of the physical aspects of some of those tours, there was a tour we did where we traveled with our own PA truck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Now, the good thing about that was it was dependable every single night. You knew what the monitors were going to be like. You knew everything was good to go. So that was that. But it was a huge, huge truck. So so that was that was interesting.
Yeah, at a certain point you got like a convoy going, right? I mean, it's like
yeah.
it's like a whole thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then, okay, and it's amazing. So you've had all these incredible experiences. You've played all these different kinds of audiences and stuff like that. I'm thinking, I feel disingenuous to not mention the incredible Chris Force. When did Chris come to your attention from Amber Asylum?
We were doing a show at the Great American Music Hall, I think it's called, in San Francisco.
Yep, one of my favorite venues.
And I love that venue.
So
that's
beautiful.
where I perform with Neurosis. Yeah, I love it. And this was the first time we played there. And Michael said this woman is going to be joining us on stage. Her name is Chris Force. She's going to be joining us for this instrumental intro kind of thing. And so that's when I first met her. Was when she joined us on stage, and she's talked about it. I think it was in the book written about Swans. She talked about how there was no prep, and so she said during the show she just watched Jarboe's hands to see what she should play, because she said that the sound check was just some screaming and yelling, and so she didn't get to prep it all musically, is what she said. And that sounds about right. Yeah, there's a lot of screaming and yelling in the sound checks, and the rehearsals. Lots of drama. Yeah, but yeah. So that was when I first met her, and we became really good friends. I was asked to do like a Baltic kind of the tour. I think this was 2004, I think. Mm-hmm. And she joined me for that. And her band Amber Asylum has toured with me and opened for shows, and we've played together.
Great band
for shows. And she's just my gosh, she's my go-to. I mean, I'll ask her so many technical questions. She knows everything, and she's an incredible mastering engineer, and she's really the best. I mean, I can't say enough about her. She's a consummate artist, and she's so educated and so knowledgeable that she's like the person I always go to for any kind of question. We're working together. We started. I don't want to talk about people's names, but in a bad way. But this gentleman came and over a year ago, and said he was doing a film and directing a film. Wanted to know if we would do the soundtrack for it. So I said, sure, if you will agree for Chris to be working on it with me, because we did the path together. Yeah, and she can bring it home. Yeah. So we work together as a team. So anyway, so that fell through. The person just vanished after we started working on it, and so this thing is almost done now. We have Thor Harris involved in it, and we have Jackie from Amber Asylum working on it, and then I did like a poem that I wrote when I was a teenager on it, and a bunch of background vocals and some keyboard stuff, and then she played a bunch of instruments herself, of course, and so that is something that we're working on, but I don't know how we're going to get it out there, other than we'll probably put it on Bandcamp or something like that.
Yeah, well, Bandcamp's a great utility for things like along those lines. Yeah, makes it easy to connect directly with folks, for sure. Yeah, she's a really good friend. Yeah. Well, and that's definitely something that seemed like it was a natural pairing of awesome artists together, much in the same way as your collab with Helen Money with Allison.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, another stunning. My God, she's also a knowledgeable, and she's extremely musically trained, and just technically proficient, as well as very passionate with what she plays. She's amazing. But another person that I admired and still admire and was thrilled to work with on one of his songs, and that's Joseph Weissam. And he did something that I just absolutely adore, the soundtrack for Only Lovers Left Alive.
Oh my God! What a great soundtrack! I do this movie show.
Oh my God! It's just incredible.
I'm on this movie show as like a whatever co-host, and we just did that movie recently, and it had been a while, and I was like, oh my God, this soundtrack's amazing! Like this is like one of the best soundtracks ever. It's so good.
I know it fits the film perfectly, and it's really an example where, you know, the music is super enhancing the film. You know, like it's just a perfect marriage. You know, and I think it was like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, The Wire asked me to write this thing about favorite albums or something, and that's impossible to do, you know. And so, so there's so many great. And I said, well, not in any order, but on my radar at the moment that I answer this question. That's all I can say, right? And so I mentioned Popol Vuh, of course, and things that have really moved me, you know, throughout my life, and then I mentioned that soundtrack. So apparently he saw that, and the next thing I know, he's asking me to sing on a song on his album, and there was a part where he kind of speaks, and he wanted me to do that part too. And so I said, well, do you want me to perfectly match your phrasing? And he said, yes. And so, you know, the way to do that is not just through hearing. The way to do that is to physically look at the frequencies. Yeah. And to match it. And so, and I know how to do that because I was asked years ago, to do the voice of the maid, white Southern maid on the Venture Brothers.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yes. So that's how I did that too, was I watched the frequencies of the audio of there was a guide vocal of some man just doing the actual syllables. Yeah. So I watched, and here's the problem with that. The cartoon character's mouth was already formed. So I had to match the cartoon.
Oh no.
And so that was cool.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed doing it because I was able just to pull out that accent, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. So it's not at all the same, except for the fact that the methodology of watching the frequencies of a pre-recorded vocal helps you to perfectly match the syllables and intonation of that voice. So you hear and you also see. And so I did that, and it was just perfect. And so I was so happy that he asked me, right? So then the next thing I know, we're being asked to do a tour together. Oh, wow. And I'm hoping that this planned tour happens. It's November into December in Europe. And
that'd be incredible. Yeah.
Because, you know, with the state of the world right now and this pandemic ebbing and tiding and then you know, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I think like a lot of musicians got so tired of their tour being postponed that, you know, and then ultimately canceled, that it's like now we're all kind of skittish. Like, is it going to happen? Is it you know what I mean?
Yeah, you get burned so many times that you don't even want to get hope that it's gonna. You just don't want to. It's anhedonic almost, so to speak.
I know, and 2020 we had the most beautiful, perfect tour that I can't even dream. I mean, I was just so happy. There was all these venues I wanted to perform, and I was thrilled. I was beyond thrilled, and I was just crushed. I mean, just crushed when it fell apart, like crushed. And so we had this multimedia whole show planned, and so all that work, you know, and then to have it taken away, and
it's just
so it kind of, you know, makes you disheartened. And then everybody's like, oh, we're going to do it next year. No, are we going to do it? No. So now it's like, is it going to happen in November? Let's hope so. So
it's almost like you don't believe it until it starts, right? But
yeah, and of course now we have something else that's come along, and the problem with that is on the news it says, at least right now, it's saying that airfare is just going to go through the roof. So, you know, you're planning on flying to Europe to start a tour.
Yeah. You know, the folks that are being enriched anyway from artists trying to, Great. Well.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of a bummer note to end on. But yeah, that is that Vox Populi song on Ex Mortis. I actually forgot all about that, frankly. But that is a really cool collab. Like I would love to hear more. More from that, because that's a fascinating fella. Like
he's fascinating and so unique.
Yeah, very unique.
I mean,
yes.
Not many people play that instrument, and he. This is a plan. I have to say planned, right? It's a co-tour. We're not, doing a show together. It's like a co-tour, but I think it's going to be good because now I've decided to take things in a completely different direction visually. Like now I want just a real like Samuel Beckett theater. I mean, I just want it to be
cool.
Stark.
Yeah.
Stark and bleak, just we were gonna have like this film and all this stuff, and so I'm just gonna have everything very, very raw. So and it's kind of to complement the vibe that I get from his work, and so I think it's about the music more than it is about sitting there in the dark with the film on you,
Yeah, it's almost
I think that
unadorned or something, right? So that
yeah. So we'll see, and I'll be behind the keyboard, which is what I was going to do in 2020, and so now I'll do that on this tour if it happens. And I haven't. The last time I did the keyboard live on stage, any kind of keyboard was like a experimental festival thing. And where I had one of those headsets, with the mic in front of it.
Yeah, the Madonna headset.
Like Madonna. Yeah. I was wearing that and then playing this like keyboard with these samples and even samples of my voice. And so that was the last time I did. So this will be interesting. But yes, I'm hoping it'll happen, and it'll be with P. Emerson Williams on guitar and electric guitar. And so I think that he'll do looping and layers of tones and stuff. So it'll be cool, but let's just hope it happens.
Well, I'm putting all the positive energy in the world that I have towards that happening, because I think that sounds freaking awesome. So
there's lots of cool bands on the road right now. So
there are.
I think that they're doing it somehow. So
I just saw my bud Dave Pajo play in Gang of Four last week, which was surreal and absolutely beautiful and life affirming. It was wonderful.
Oh yeah, wow.
Big shoes, but he killed it.
Go ahead.
I'd say he had good. Yeah, I mean, Andy Gill was, kind of one of my favorite guitar players of all time, but he pulled it off with aplomb and vigor, and it was an amazing time. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Nick Cave, Nick Cave and Warren Ellis is there. I think they're in the U.S. right now, but they didn't play anywhere near me. So but I think there are some groups coming. I'm hoping to see Varjuna in September before I leave, if I leave, and they're playing a big theater, so I think that I'll brave it. And then the mask mandate is gone for a lot of the country. It all depends on everybody getting vaccinated, which is why I don't understand why people don't get the picture. You're trying to kill something.
Yeah.
You try to kill something, you kill it by stamping it out.
Yeah, that's
end of subject.
Yeah, that's I agree, and it's weird. I've gotten in trouble on this show by getting too rowdy about my opinions on it, but I got strong ones on it. So I'll leave it at that. But I firmly believe that this is never going to be over if people don't take it seriously and have some empathy for the people around them, and that's all there is to it. I just see it as an enemy attacking, and exactly.
You have to fight it. That's all I see it as. I believe in fighting back, not just laying down.
Yeah, pretending it doesn't exist. Exactly. That's not really going to fly.
Fight back.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
It's pretty simple, but fortunately, members of my family and friends are all like me, so I don't have to deal with anything.
Yeah, it's a different podcast to be clear.
Yeah, you're right.
But I would very much
totally
like this to be over, and I would. Yeah, that'd be nice. It'd be nice to be able to have nice things again, and maybe we all can be a little more appreciative of them when we do. That would be nice.
I know. Do you know I haven't been out to dinner since like January 2020?
Crazy, right?
I mean, I really want to go out to dinner.
Yeah, it's like the littlest things is like, oh yeah, remember that? Remember when we went out to dinner? Oh yeah, that was great. It's so wild. Jarboe, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh yeah, it was really cool to meet you and to talk with you.
So
it's a lot of fun.
I'm very excited about the new releases. I'm very excited that you're, as always, relentlessly doing cool stuff. The last thing I bring up, it's the only can question that I ever ask folks that are on the show, and you can choose to interpret it however you like, but why do you do what you do?
Well, because I have no choice. It's just a compulsion. It's just that there's no choice. There is nothing else I can do.
Nice.
I mean, I think, the interesting thing, I'm going to quote Michael Dry here. Nobody asked a butcher why he cuts meat.
Oh. Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. That's solid. Jarboe, thank you ever so much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you. All right, bye.
Oh, there she goes. The living Jarboe. What a great time. Let's hear a couple tunes.
Cry mighty well-wishers. I can't absorb idiots. This keep a score. Where are you? And I would love, I can't breathe to disappointment. Where will I go from here? What will I do? Without you in my face, my demon. Someone give me a reason to live. I had you positioned in it. It's like this. You make me laugh. You make my life easier. You diminish my pain. Erase traces of scar tissue across my brain.
Jarboe. And Neurosis. It's a race. That is a powerful song, my friends. Before that, we had... So that's on the Neurosis and Jarboe record. Before that, we had Storm coming on off of the Jesu Lifeline record. Featuring, of course, the wonderful Jarboe. And then Crimea River, which that's a Julie London song. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. Which, of course, is on the Skin, Blood, Woman, Roses record. Now available. Record Store Day. Go get it. Go find it. Go support a lifer, an artist that is quite badass. I thought it was a great conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed that. So yeah, the name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so very much for listening to it. You can find this show usually, no, always really,
Come to the close of our broadcast day.
Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific, Radio Nope, RadioNope.com. Say yes to Nope.
This is my farewell transmission.
Also streaming these days on Facebook, YouTube,
Signing
Twitch,
off,
Protonic Reversal
Mr.
Show,
and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea.
Protonic.reversal on Instagram, on Twitter, on
Anyone
all
within
the
the sound of my voice.
things. Just look it up. This show is always available for free at the archives.
I've got
ProtonicReversal.com. Always free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding.
50,000 watts of power.
Patreon.com/Protonic Reversal to get access to the episodes
Ionize the
sooner.
air.
And by doing so, you also support the show, which is lovely. And that's $1 a month to get you there.
This
Thanks for folks
microphone
sharing the episodes around, letting people know about it,
into electricity.
liking, subscribing, all that business. It's how people find out about it. It's
Can you
appreciated.
hear me now?
Inspired the fire, become media.
Out on Route 128.
Stay safe out there.
You're dark and lonely.
You take it easy.
I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 The end of radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the the close of our broadcast day. Got my radio on. Can you hear me now?